The founding of Liberia, and the role of the American Colonization Society. What happens when ideals of liberty clash with the realities of oppression? The year was 1816, and the United States stood at a crossroads, caught between its proud proclamations of freedom and the stark reality of slavery. As the number of freed African Americans grew, so did the nation's unease about their place in society. Out of this tension emerged the American Colonization Society, ACS, an organization with a bold and controversial aim to relocate freed African Americans to Africa and, in doing so, reshape their destiny. The founding of Liberia and the role of the American Colonization Society. The year was 1816, and the United States was a nation grappling with profound contradictions. On one hand, it prided itself on its ideals of liberty and justice. On the other, it was a society deeply entrenched in the institution of slavery. The growing number of freed African Americans, especially in northern states, posed a dilemma for white Americans. Many were uncertain about how freed individuals would fit into a society that had long subjugated them, and racist ideologies of the time fueled fears of integration. Out of this complex landscape emerged the American Colonization Society, ACS, an organization with a bold and controversial vision to relocate freed African Americans to Africa. The birth of an idea. The ACS was founded in December 1816 in Washington, D.C., by a coalition of clergymen, politicians, and philanthropists. Among its notable founders were Robert Finley, a Presbyterian minister, Bushrod Washington, a Supreme Court justice and nephew of George Washington, and Henry Clay, a prominent politician and orator. The ACS aimed to solve what it called the problem of free blacks by resettling them in Africa. While some members of the ACS were abolitionists who believed this was a way to offer freed African Americans a chance for self-determination, others were motivated by less noble reasons, such as the desire to reduce racial tensions in the United States or to reinforce the institution of slavery by removing its most vocal opponents. The plan was ambitious, but it faced significant resistance. Many African Americans were deeply skeptical of the ACS. Leaders like Frederick Douglass and David Walker denounced the organization, arguing that African Americans were as much a part of the United States as anyone else and deserved to claim their rights on American soil. Still, some freed blacks, frustrated by systemic racism and limited opportunities, saw colonization as a chance to build a new life in their ancestral homeland. A new homeland in Africa. In 1820, the ACS sent its first ship, the Elizabeth, to West Africa with a small group of freed African Americans. The journey was fraught with challenges. Upon arrival, they faced hostility from local tribes, unfamiliar diseases, and harsh living conditions. The settlement struggled initially, and many of the settlers succumbed to malaria and other illnesses. Despite these early setbacks, the ACS persisted. In 1822, the society secured a more permanent foothold in a region on the West African coast after negotiations with local leaders, particularly King Peter of the Day people. The land purchased was named Cape Mesurado, and the settlement established there was called Monrovia, in honor of U.S. President James Monroe, a supporter of the colonization project. Over the next 2 decades, thousands of freed African Americans emigrated to the settlement, which would later become the Republic of Liberia. The Declaration of Independence. By the 1840s, Monrovia and its surrounding settlements had grown into a thriving colony. However, tensions were brewing. Many settlers, now known as Americo-Liberians, sought greater autonomy from the ACS, which still controlled much of the colony's governance. The settlers wanted to establish their own nation, free from American oversight. In 1847, their aspirations were realized when Liberia declared itself an independent republic, adopting a constitution modeled after that of the United States. Joseph Jenkins Roberts, a former Virginian and prominent figure in the colony, became Liberia's first president. The new nation symbolized a bold experiment in self-governance and a unique fusion of American and African influences. The flag of Liberia, bearing a single star and stripes, echoed the American flag, but represented the settlers' new identity as an independent African nation. Americo-Liberians and indigenous populations. While Liberia was founded as a land of freedom for freed African Americans, its establishment created new hierarchies. The Americo-Liberians, despite their history of oppression in the United States, often adopted an air of superiority over the indigenous populations they encountered. They brought with them Western customs, Christianity, and a system of governance that mirrored the United States, but this often marginalized the local tribes. Tensions between the Americo-Liberians and indigenous groups simmered for decades. While the settlers dominated politics and economics, indigenous Liberians found themselves excluded from many aspects of national life. This division would become a defining feature of Liberia's history, contributing to social and political unrest in the centuries to come. A complex legacy. The founding of Liberia remains one of history's most complex narratives. On one hand, it provided an opportunity for thousands of freed African Americans to escape the systemic racism of the United States and build a nation where they could govern themselves. Liberia became a beacon of hope for Black autonomy and self-determination, inspiring Pan-African movements in later years. On the other hand, the colonization movement was deeply flawed. It was rooted in a paternalistic belief that African Americans could not thrive in the United States and often ignored the agency and desires of the very people it sought to help. Furthermore, the Americo-Liberian dominance over indigenous populations created new systems of inequality, echoing the colonialism that Africa had endured under European powers. Epilogue. Liberia's story did not end with its founding. Over the decades, the nation faced numerous challenges, including internal conflicts, economic struggles, and devastating civil wars in the late 20th century. Yet, it also achieved milestones, such as electing Africa's first female president, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, in 2006, and contributing to global peacekeeping efforts. The founding of Liberia is a testament to the enduring human spirit and the complexities of history. It is a story of hope and struggle, freedom and inequality, and the profound ways in which people seek to carve out spaces of dignity and independence in an often unjust world.